Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Um, I will be sharing my screen, my slides, and I'll give a image description for each slide. Most of the slides have white background with black text, and I'll read out the text, and any image descriptions, I'll do those as well. So for this first slide, it's me, Meet the Speaker. It's from CCB, and it's a promotional graphic from the Canadian Council of the Blind, introducing myself as a speaker for today, Beyond Diagnosis webinar series. The background is a deep indigo blue with bold white lettering across the top, reading Meet the Speaker. And the Canadian Council of the Blind logo appears in the upper right corner. On the left is a professional headshot of myself. I'm an Asian woman with shoulder length wavy brown hair, smiling warmly at the camera. I'm wearing a navy blazer over a bright pink top, and the portrait sits on a soft mauve background with my name Anne Mok displayed in bold navy blue letters on a white banner beneath the photo. To the right of the portrait, the white text reads, Anne will share her lived experience of progressive vision loss, dual chronic illness, and creative reinvention through storytelling, authorship, and voice acting as a model for adapting after diagnosis. Across the bottom of the graphic, a white banner displays the event title, Beyond the Diagnosis, in large navy blue letters. Beside it, the date appears in bright green and navy blue, 13th of July, 2026, followed by the time 12 noon EST. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from Surrey, British Columbia, on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and other Coast Salish peoples. I am so grateful to live, work, and share stories from these lands, and I honor the Indigenous communities who have cared for them for generations. And I'd also like to offer a brief visual description of myself here. As mentioned, I'm an Asian woman with long, highlighted brown hair styled in waves. And today I'm wearing a white top and a warm smile. And I'm sitting here in my home office. Behind me is a bouquet of white flowers and a frame of pressed flowers. They are all artificial because I've learned that I can't keep the real ones alive. So before we dive in, I just want to say that I started my Instagram account at Purpose in View, where I use storytelling to help build understanding between the sighted and blind communities. And along the way, that journey has led me to become an author, advocate, keynote speaker, and most recently, a professionally trained voice actor. But more importantly, I am someone who has walked the road that many of you may be on today, and I'm still walking it too. In fact, I've recently had significant changes in my vision, and this week I'll be going through quite a bit of testing as we determine what's happening with me. So, just over 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with cone rod dystrophy, and that was after many, many years of advocating for answers. And cone rod dystrophy is a rare inherited retinal disease. At the time, I thought the diagnosis would finally give me clarity, but instead, it gave me a whole new set of questions. And I'm just going to switch to the next slide. And the text reads, Beyond the diagnosis, no permission needed to live a meaningful life. A diagnosis changes your life. It doesn't determine your future. I'd also love to get a sense of who's joining us today. And if you're comfortable, would you mind putting one word in the chat that describes what brings you here today? So maybe you've recently been diagnosed. Maybe you've been living with vision loss for years. Maybe you're supporting a family member or friend. Or maybe you're simply here to learn. So you can go ahead and put that in the chat and we'll take a look at that. The curiosity, I'm here to learn from you. Thank you. Also here to learn. Thank you. Here to learn. Support programs for people with vision loss. Glaucoma, lost sight in one eye, also fear what is to come. Rediscovery and identity. Always learning, even dealing with my own blindness, because everyone's journey is different and also supporting one another. Have RP and waiting for a guide dog, but here to learn. I work in the field of vision rehab as a professional. Interest in others' experience with vision changes. So thank you so much for everyone for contributing to the chat. I'm so glad that we're all here together. And oh yes, I have. Hi Anne, I have low vision with glaucoma and retinal problem. I think it's so important when we have community and we have others that we feel like we can connect with. And we have another note that says have now 4 eye diseases. So thank you all for sharing those with me. And looking at everyone's comments, I really can't help but think back to the day when I received my own diagnosis. So you, I want to ask you a question and for you just to think back to where you were when you received yours. And what was that very first question that came into your mind? Maybe it was, will I lose my sight? Will I still be able to work? Will I still be able to drive? Will people see me differently? What does this mean for my future? Or maybe it was the same question that I asked myself over 11 years ago, and that was, now what? Just over 11 years ago, after years of advocating for answers, I was diagnosed with cone rod dystrophy, a rare inherited retinal disease. And at the time, I thought the diagnosis would finally give me clarity. Instead, it gave me a whole new set of questions. And looking back now, I realized something. That diagnosis wasn't the beginning of my story. It wasn't the end of my story either. It was the beginning of a completely different chapter. And today, I'd like to talk about that chapter. Not just the diagnosis, but everything that came after it. Because if there's one thing I hope you remember from our time together today, it's this. And we're at our next slide, which says, a diagnosis changes your life. It doesn't determine your future. For a long time, I believed that I was waiting for life to begin again. I was waiting until I had accepted my vision loss, waiting until I felt more confident, waiting until I had all the answers, waiting for someone to tell me that I could still build a meaningful life. But what I eventually discovered was this: I never needed permission, and neither do you. Next slide. Text reads, the day everything changed. This is my family photo. This is a family portrait taken outdoors in a park on a bright sunny day. We were at a family wedding, and there are towering evergreen trees that fill the background, creating this peaceful setting of rich greens and dappled sunlight. In the center is younger me, smiling gently at the camera. I have shoulder-length dark hair with soft caramel highlights, and I'm wearing a champagne-colored satin sleeveless dress. Surrounding me are my husband and our 3 young children. This is back in 2007. On the left is my 15-year-old daughter. She leans into the group with a wide smile. She has long dark hair, wears a mauve halter-style dress, dangling blue earrings and braces. And standing to the right of me is my young son, age 10, smiling in a navy blue plaid short-sleeved button-up shirt. In front is our youngest daughter, age 6, wearing a simple white sleeveless dress. She smiles brightly, with her dark hair styled in an updo. She was the flower girl for this event. On the far right is my husband. He's leaning in close to the family with a broad smile. He's wearing a dark navy suit, a light blue dress shirt, and a patterned tie. The family stands close together, with hands resting gently on one another's shoulders, conveying warmth, love, and togetherness. At first glance, it looks like a joyful family portrait capturing an ordinary moment in time. What the photograph doesn't reveal is that this is 2 years before my husband would have a stroke at the age of 40, and my vision had already begun to change. I had no idea what was to come. When people hear the words, "the day everything changed," they often imagine one dramatic moment: a phone call, an accident, a doctor delivering unexpected news. For me, it wasn't quite that simple. And looking back now, I can see the signs that had been there for many years. As a child, I struggled to read the clock on the classroom wall. I couldn't see the minutes in the seconds hand. It actually took me many years to figure out how to tell time. And I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that I wasn't that smart. I couldn't read the numbers on the overhead projector. The teacher was teaching us long division, and I couldn't figure it out. I wore these thick Coke bottle lenses, and because my siblings wore glasses too, nobody thought much of it. We simply assumed that was my eyesight. Years later, in my 20s, I had laser eye surgery, and for the first time in my life, I could actually see. I remember thinking, this is amazing. The leaves were 3D, the sun was beautiful, the world just came to life, and I thought my vision problems were finally behind me. But little by little, things started changing again. Night driving became terrifying. I couldn't see the lane markings. The street signs would appear too late for me to read them. The license plates that were right in front of me were so blurry I couldn't read them. My heart would pound every time I got behind the wheel because I was working so hard just to see. And then it wasn't just at night anymore. In the daytime, I'd be driving down the road and suddenly realize I had already passed the street I was looking for because I couldn't read the sign until the sign was right above me. And pedestrians seemed to appear out of nowhere when they stepped into a crosswalk. Walking into a restaurant from the bright sunshine felt like someone had suddenly turned the lights off. My eyes couldn't adjust, and grocery shopping became harder because products started blending together on the shelves. I found myself relying more and more on color, memory, and routine. I kept going to the optometrist and saying the same thing. I'm not seeing what I know I'm supposed to be able to see. Appointment after appointment. I'm not seeing what I know I should be able to see. New glasses. I'm not seeing what I know I should be able to see. Another prescription. I'm not seeing what I know I should be able to see. This went on for 8 years. Eventually, I started wondering, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm imagining this. Maybe everyone sees like this. Maybe this is just getting older. One day, I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. I decided to ask for contact lenses. I thought, if I put these lenses right up against my eyeballs, maybe I would be able to see better. Instead, everything became blurrier. And oddly enough, that became the turning point, because that was finally when my optometrist decided to refer me to a retinal specialist. I walked into the retinal specialist's office carrying years of frustration, and I remember saying through tears, I feel like it's all in my head. She looked at me and simply said, I believe you. That in itself meant the world to me. A huge weight was lifted. We did 2 more years of further testing, and then I finally received my diagnosis of cone rod dystrophy, a rare inherited retinal disease. And in simple terms, it means the light sensing cells in my retina, those cones and rods, are slowly dying. And for me, that affects things like reading, recognizing faces, seeing in bright sunlight, adjusting to changes in lighting, and eventually my peripheral vision. The way I often describe it is this: blindness isn't all or nothing, it's a spectrum. I still have some vision, but I don't always see what people expect me to see. And that's why I often say I'm blind-sighted. I can see, but I can't see. I can look directly at something and still miss it. I can walk into a room and not recognize someone I know. I can be looking for an object that's right in front of me and someone else will spot it immediately. My eyes take in the world differently now. There was relief because I finally had an answer, but there was heartbreak too, because the answer came with no cure. The diagnosis gave my condition a name, but it also left me with 1,000 questions. And looking back now, I realized something. The hardest part wasn't receiving the diagnosis. The hardest part was believing that because my life had changed, my future had to become smaller. I now know that isn't true, but I didn't know it then. After I received my diagnosis, I went home with this yellow sticky note I had asked the retinal specialist to write my diagnosis. It had three words on it: cone rod dystrophy. And I had finally gotten the answer I'd been searching for. But here's what surprised me. Having a diagnosis didn't automatically give me direction. It didn't tell me how to grieve. It didn't tell me how to explain my vision loss to other people. It didn't tell me how to keep working, how to rebuild my confidence, or how to imagine a future that looked different from the one I had planned. I knew what I had, I just didn't know how to live with it. Looking back now, I realize what I needed most wasn't another medical appointment. I needed someone who had walked this road before me, someone who could sit beside me and say, you're going to be okay. Not because this journey would be easy, but because this diagnosis didn't get the final say in my life. And today, I'd like to be that person for you, not because I have all the answers. Our journeys will all look different, but because I've walked this road and I'm still walking it. These are the conversations I wish someone had shared with me when I was first diagnosed. Next slide. Text reads, what I wish someone had told me. A diagnosis changes your life. It doesn't determine your future. The first conversation I wish I'd had was that it's okay to grieve. Not because you're giving up, not because you're weak, but because something significant has changed. When people hear the word grief, They often think about losing someone they love. But one of the biggest surprises after my diagnosis was realizing that grief can also come from losing the life you thought you were going to have. I wasn't grieving one big moment. I was grieving hundreds of little moments. The day I decided to give up driving, the time I couldn't recognize someone waving at me across a room, realizing I simply couldn't jump in the car and go wherever I wanted anymore, wondering if I'd still be able to do the work I loved, wondering if people would start seeing my blindness before they saw me. And looking back now, I realize I wasn't just grieving my eyesight, I was grieving certainty, independence, the future I had imagined. And what made it even harder was that life kept moving. People would often say things like, "Ah, at least you still have some vision," or, "Oh, you'll figure it out." They meant well, but those words didn't leave much room for grief. What I needed wasn't for someone to fix it. I needed someone to say, "Of course, you're grieving. Something important has changed." One of the things I wrote about in my book, Resilience and Purpose, is that resilience doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. When I wrote Resilience and Purpose, I thought I was writing about vision loss. But looking back now, I realized I was writing about something much bigger. I was writing about what it means to keep rebuilding your life every time it changes. Resilience begins when we allow ourselves to acknowledge what we've lost while remaining open to what is still possible. If you're newly diagnosed, or even if you've been living with vision loss for years and you're still grieving, I want you to hear this. Next slide. Text reads, "You don't need permission to grieve." Grief isn't a sign that you're giving up. It's a sign that something mattered. And giving yourself permission to grieve isn't the end of moving forward. It's often the very beginning. And once I stopped feeling guilty for grieving, I could finally begin taking the next step. Next slide. Text reads, "Asking for help isn't giving up." The second conversation I wish someone had had with me was this: asking for help isn't giving up. If I'm honest, this was probably the hardest lesson and in the hardest season of my life. I had always been independent. I was the one helping other people. I was raising a family. I was a mom of 3 kids in the busiest season of their lives. I was the caregiver to my husband, who had suffered a stroke at the age of 40. I was driving everywhere. I was working 2 and 3 jobs as the primary breadwinner. I didn't want to become someone who needed help because I honestly didn't even know how to ask for help. Somewhere along the way, I'd convinced myself that independence meant doing everything on my own. And I think many of us grow up believing that. We celebrate the people who don't need anyone. We admire the people who can do it all. So when vision loss began changing how I moved through the world, asking for help felt like failure. And to be honest, I resisted using a white cane. To me, it felt like the moment everything became real. I worried about what people would think. I worried that the cane would become the first thing people noticed about me. I worried that people would see the cane before they saw me, Anne. And there's also this stigma. For myself as an Asian woman, growing up in Vancouver, a very diverse city, I had never seen an Asian woman with a white cane. There was that cultural stigma too. And I often didn't think that I deserved a white cane because I could see. but I couldn't. So looking back now, I smile when I think about it because the White Cane didn't take away my independence. It gave it back. It gave me the confidence to travel on my own. It gave me the confidence to cross those busy intersections. It gave strangers the information they needed to understand why I might not see them waving. It allowed me to stop pretending I could see things that I couldn't. Instead of making my world smaller, it made it bigger. And the same thing happened when I found community. Before my diagnosis, I didn't know anyone who was blind. I thought I had to figure out everything by myself. Then I met people who had already walked this road, people who understood the questions I hadn't even learned how to ask yet. And through organizations like the Canadian Council of the Blind and CNIB, I found something I didn't even realize I was missing. I found people who simply got it. I also discovered tools that helped me reclaim parts of my independence: screen readers, magnification, accessible apps, AI. Today, I use technology almost every single day, not because it replaces my vision, but because it expands what I'm able to do. And today, I travel across Canada and internationally to speak. I consult on accessibility projects. I've had the opportunity to advocate on Capitol Hill. I've worked with brands like Specsavers and Purdy's Chocolatiers. I work as a voice actor from my home studio. None of those things happened because my vision came back. They happened because I learned to use the tools, the technology, and the community that helped me move forward. And somewhere along the way, my definition of independence changed. Independence isn't doing everything by yourself. Independence is having the confidence to use the tools, the supports, and the people that allow you to keep living the life you want. And that's something I wish someone had told me much sooner. Next slide. Text reads, "You don't need permission to ask for help." Asking for help isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you'll ever do, because asking for help isn't about becoming less independent. It's about becoming independent in a different way. And once I stopped believing that asking for help made me weak, I discovered something even more important. I didn't have to keep trying to live life exactly the way I had before. I could begin building a life that worked for who I was now. Next slide. Text reads, "Doing things differently isn't doing less." The third conversation I wish someone had with me was this: doing things differently isn't doing less. After my diagnosis, I spent a lot of energy trying to hold on to the life I had before. I wanted everything to stay the same. I wanted to keep doing things the way I had always done them. I thought if I adapted too much, somehow I was giving in to my vision loss. Looking back now, I realize I had it backwards. Today, I still travel, I still work, I still speak on stages, I still create content, I still love exploring new places. I just do many of those things differently. Instead of driving, I plan my transportation a little more carefully. I call my bus my limo. And instead of relying only on my eyes, I rely on technology. Instead of trying to hide my blindness, I use my white cane with pride. Different doesn't mean less. If you had told me 11 years ago that one day I'd be a TEDx speaker, I would have laughed. If you had told me I'd write a book called Resilience and Purpose, I wouldn't have believed you. If you had told me I'd be standing on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., advocating for people living with vision loss, I would have thought you had the wrong person. If you had told me I'd become a professionally trained voice actor, I would have asked, are you sure? None of those opportunities happened because my vision loss disappeared. They happened because I stopped measuring my future against my past. And just when I felt like I had found my footing, life surprised me again. On January 1st, 2019, I woke up with this migraine-like headache. I assumed it would go away. It didn't. And that headache has never left. And as I'm speaking with you today, that headache sits at the back of my mind. Today I live with a neurological condition called New Daily Persistent Headache, or NDPH. It's a 24-hour-a-day headache that I've now lived with for more than 7 years. And I'll be honest, there were moments when I thought, really? Another diagnosis? It would have been easy to believe that life was getting smaller again. But something had changed. This time, I already knew that my first diagnosis had taught me that a diagnosis changes your life, it doesn't determine your future. So instead of waiting for life to return what it had been, I asked myself, how do I build a meaningful life with this too? And that's a sentence I wish someone had told me much earlier. It's to stop measuring my future against my past. Because if we do that, we'll always feel like we're losing. Last year, I gave a keynote called No Permission Needed. It was about something I had slowly been learning after my diagnosis. I spent years waiting until I felt ready, until I felt confident, waiting until I had accepted my vision loss, waiting until someone gave me permission to move forward. Then one day I realized no one was coming to give me permission. And maybe they didn't need to. We spend so much of our lives waiting until we're healthier, waiting until we're more confident, waiting until life feels normal again. But life rarely works that way. Sometimes we have to begin before we feel ready. And looking back now, I don't think my purpose was something I found after my diagnosis. I think it was something I uncovered because of the journey. My diagnosis didn't create my purpose. It revealed parts of me that had been there all along. Compassion, courage, resilience, a desire to help other people feel seen. Those qualities were always inside me. Vision loss simply gave them a place to grow. Next slide. Text reads, you don't need permission to do things differently. Different doesn't mean less. Different simply means different. And sometimes different opens doors you never even knew existed. Which brings me to the final conversation I wish someone had had with me. Because eventually I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And I started asking a different question. What can I do with the life I have now? That question changed everything. Next slide. Text reads, your story isn't over. The last conversation I wish someone had with me was this. Your story isn't over. When I was first diagnosed, I thought my life had become smaller, not overnight, but little by little. I started measuring my life by everything I thought I had lost. What I couldn't see at the time was that life wasn't becoming smaller, it was becoming different. And if you had asked me 11 years ago what my future looked like, I don't think I could have answered. All I could see was what had changed. What I couldn't see were all the things that were still waiting for me. Since my diagnosis, I've written a book called Resilience and Purpose. I've stood on a TEDx stage and shared my story. I've advocated for accessibility in my community and on Capitol Hill. I've helped shape more inclusive spaces through accessibility consultations. I've been in a Kia commercial and a CNIB PSA for National Accessibility Week. And this fall, I will be co-hosting a girls' trip to Sicily with my friend Mara, who is actually also on this call. There will be a total of 7 blind and visually impaired women and 1 mother of a blind child. I've become a professionally trained voice actor, and I'm actually going to be starting doing audio description for the blind and visually impaired community. I have my first gig this week. And I recently stood on stage in front of a live theater audience as one of the cast members in the Vision monologues. And every time I stand in front of an audience or speak to a group like you all, I'm reminded that our stories have the power to help someone else believe in what's possible. None of those things erased my vision loss. They simply reminded me that purpose doesn't disappear because life changes. Now, your story won't look like mine, and it shouldn't, because your purpose doesn't have to look like standing on a stage or writing a book or becoming an advocate. Maybe your purpose is being the grandparent who still reads stories to your grandchildren using audiobooks. Maybe it's returning to work with new accommodations. Maybe it's learning to travel independently again. Maybe it's simply believing that joy is still possible. Purpose doesn't have to be public. Sometimes purpose is deeply personal. And one of the reasons I started my Instagram account at Purpose in View was because I wanted to help build understanding between the sighted and blind communities. Because Instagram is such a visual medium, and I wanted to challenge Instagram and show that I could create content as accessible as possible while still allowing beauty to be seen. But along the way, I discovered something else. Every time we share our story, we give someone else permission to believe that their story isn't over either. And if there's one thing I've learned over the past 11 years, it's this. A diagnosis may change the way you move through the world. It may change how you work, how you travel, how you read, how you do everyday things, but it never changes your worth. It never changes your ability to love. It never changes your ability to contribute. And it never changes your capacity to live a full and meaningful life. Next slide. Text reads, "You don't need permission to build a beautiful life." I'd like to leave you with the same message we began with today. A diagnosis changes your life. It doesn't determine your future. And if you're sitting here today wondering what comes next, wondering whether you'll ever feel like yourself again, wondering if life can still be meaningful, I hope you'll remember this. You don't need permission to grieve. You don't need permission to ask for help. You don't need permission to do things differently. And you don't need permission to build a beautiful life. Because your diagnosis may be part of your story, but it will never be the whole story. I often say, I may not have sight, but I still have vision. Today, I hope you leave believing the same thing about your own life. When I was diagnosed over 11 years ago, I thought cone rod dystrophy would become the defining chapter of my life. Then came chronic pain, new challenges, new uncertainty, and yet none of those chapters became the whole story. They're chapters. They are not the title. And looking back now, I realize something. Every diagnosis changed my life, but none of them got to decide who I would become. And that's why I believe this with all my heart. A diagnosis may change the chapter you're in, it doesn't get to write the ending. And if today you're wondering what comes next, wondering whether you'll ever feel like yourself again, wondering whether life can still be joyful, I hope you'll remember these 4 conversations. You don't need permission to grieve. You don't need permission to ask for help. You don't need permission to do things differently. And you don't need permission to build a beautiful life. Because your diagnosis may become one chapter of your story, but it never gets to be the title. Thank you. And we're just on our last slide. There's an image of my book, Resilience and Purpose, Discovering Strength and Connection in Life's Cracks. It is available everywhere where books are sold. You can ask them to order it in. I've got my email address, my website, LinkedIn, and Instagram, which I can also put in the chat. So thank you so, so much for listening to me and my story. And I'd love to open this up to any questions.
Just a reminder for anyone, if you'd like to ask a question, you can submit it in the Q&A section or just in the chat, and we can. Oh, we've got a couple of hands. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong spot. And we can forward those on to Anne. I think she can. I think as a panelist, she can see them as well when they come in. So if you have a question for Anne. Oh, Diane has a question here. I'll allow her to speak. Diane, you'll have to just unmute, but you should be able to speak now.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi,
Yes.
Diane. Yes.
Hi. Wonderful.
Hi.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your lecture, your speech. My biggest question is, how do you read the things that you're speaking? Because I would love to say read something in my church or read something to my granddaughter. I have Stargard. It sounds like you have something very similar to what I have.
I think somewhat similar. I think it's very similar to also to RP as well.
Yes.
Um, I guess depending on the amount of usable vision you have, what I do when I'm doing my voice acting and reading scripts, I have my iPad, which I zoom in and put up the brightness so that I can read from there. I
Oh, okay.
also, yeah, sit at home here in my computer. I have 3 screens. So, and
Okay.
I'm zooming in a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
So what you're doing now in the home screen is having it huge on all 3 screens and you just go back and forth, do you? Is that
Yes. Yes. That's what I do.
okay? I
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I would be able to do that because I don't see very well at all centrally.
Mm.
I'm not sure. I give it a try. Yeah,
What
something like that. I do have an iPad and I can read somewhat on the iPad, so maybe I don't want to hold up
yeah.
your time,
No, no, no.
but
What
it's
some
interesting.
um people that I've heard, they're voice actors that are vision impaired, they'll have their iPad and maybe like um earphones in their ear, so they'll have voiceover read it over to them, one sentence at a time, and they'll read it out loud.
Yes, I have tried that, but
Hmm.
it doesn't seem to match what I'm saying.
Mm, right.
Unless there's some way you could stop it. Stop it, start it, stop it, start it, stop it, start it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Or if
I'm amazed at what you did. That's why I was
yeah.
in.
Or if
Okay.
you even have it recorded in your ear so that you can start and stop it too as a voice recording.
Yes, I don't know exactly how I would do that, but
Yeah.
I'd have to experiment. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
So in your iPad, if the in the voice memos or voice recordings
Yes. Yeah, I
there,
record
you
all
can
the time.
you record it there, and you can maybe play it in your ear while you're doing your talk or your speech. But you can always pause it at at the end of every sentence.
You can if you can find the
Yeah.
pause.
Yeah. Or if like when I have the wired microphones, like I'll use the button there
Oh,
to
yeah, that would be
talk
much better.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
a wired microphone. So the microphone is wired actually to the iPad. Is that it? And then you have a button
Yeah.
that's available.
I
Okay, I
I
didn't
just use
realize that.
the iPhone earphones that are wired that I could just plug in, and I
Yeah.
use those. Yeah, because then they've got the pause button there.
Okay. My earphones that came with my iPad do not have a button, so that's interesting. I'll
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
investigate that.
Check with the Apple Store.
Yeah.
They've got one there. Yeah,
Okay, great. Thank you very
yeah.
much.
I know it's trying to find like the tools
It
for our
is.
tool belt, right?
That's right. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, thank you very
yeah,
much.
yeah. Thanks for your question.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Diane. Okay, so we have a few questions here or a few messages come in here in the chat. Oh, sorry, where are we here? Lorna says, thank you so much for the inspirational talks. Sandra says, thank you, Anne. I feel so strong. Leslie says, thank you so much, Anne. Your story and lessons are wonderful. Thank you, Anne. It was a beautiful speech. You're such an inspiring person. Fairman says, thank you so much for this wonderful talk. How is your current eyesight situation?
Mm.
That's a question from Fairman.
Yes. So, it's actually just a couple of weeks ago, I started having a dark curtain come across my right eye, and I went to the optometrist's office. They examined me while I was doing tests there. A gray curtain came across my left eye. So, obviously very concerned. Um, they sent me quickly to my retinal specialist. They did a lot of testing to make sure that I wasn't having a retinal tear or retinal detachment. They couldn't see any signs of that. But what they are saying right now, this is not the usual progression of cone rod dystrophy. They think this is something different. So what they're concerned are right now is this adding to my cone rod dystrophy is an autoimmune response. So tomorrow I'll be doing blood work, um, autoimmune retinopathy panel, and then I will also get a fluorescein angiogram done too to look at the vessels. So right now it's another like roller coaster ride. We kind of live between our appointments, and every 6 months we're like, holding our breath. This is another one of them too. So I'm just uh, I'm just at the tip of the roller coaster right now, hanging on a cliff. And it hits you hard, emotionally hits you hard because you've been trying to work so hard to like stay on top of it and stay positive, but vision loss is not a linear journey. It is full of ups and downs and road bumps. So this is where my vision is currently. Yeah, a lot of questions right now.
Okay. And sorry, that was Fairman. Oh, Shelly Ann has asked if you could please spell your name so that we
Sure.
might be able to find your book. And she also
Okay.
says that it was an excellent presentation. So
Oh, thank you.
um, we can I can type your name into the chat. We can also, if you have those links, we can directly link Anne or directly link everyone to Anne's book and
Okay.
website.
I'll put it in the chat here. There we go.
Oh, perfect. Yes. And Amanda asks, did you have any mentors or books that influenced your journey, particularly getting into voice acting?
Mm. In terms of books in my journey, I think the acceptance part was when I became chronically ill with new daily persistent headache. I was actually bedridden for 8 months. Um, Definitely one of the hardest seasons. There was a book that a woman had wrote about her journey with new daily persistent headache, and I kind of devoured that book because all I wanted to know was there ever a cure?
Mm.
And is she surviving? And if she's surviving, is she thriving? And I went through that book, and it was a 15-year journey that she had, trying everything under the sun, spending thousands and thousands of dollars for treatment. And at the end of the book, even after 15 years, there was no cure. And so that for me was a huge realization that there is no cure. This is something I'm going to be living with. And I needed to find a way to live my life. I didn't want my children seeing me give up on life. And I wanted to know that, for them, if they were going through this, how would I want to help them? So slowly, I started to try to do small things. Like even just taking a shower was difficult. Um, but strangely enough, it was social media that helped me. I wanted to find community. I wanted to find someone like me, either with vision loss or my chronic illness, because I felt so alone. And so when I started on social media, it was really to help me get out of bed. I would take one day where I would take a shower, wash my hair. The next day, I would take a photo. The next day, I would write a caption. The next day, I would post it. The next day, I would respond to comments. So it was a daily task that I was doing to help me move forward in life. And that's what helped me get out of the pain. And then also changing my mindset that this pain is going to be with me, but I need to live in the low pain moments. So once I started changing my mindset, it helped a lot. Um, that's what helped me move through it and find purpose in my life. In terms of with voice acting, interestingly enough, last year, um, when I had written my book and the book came out, and I was supposed to do the audiobook portion of the book, I had another appointment with my ophthalmologist where my vision had significantly decreased. And it really hit me hard um, that I struggled with depression for quite a bit last year. And I tried recording my audiobook, but I could hear how sad my voice was. And I thought, and everybody was asking for the audiobook version. And I thought maybe I need to get some coaching, some voice coaching. So I enrolled with a couple of friends to do voice acting. It was a 1 month program. And something about that helped bring me back to life. I found some joy again. I found my inner child. I had so much fun just doing commercials and animation. And I ended up doing an acting class, and that was a lot of fun. And then an opportunity came up for me to do the full time voice acting program. And, my plate was already quite full, but I decided to take a leap. Um, what the school counselor had said was like, "Where do you see your life in 6 months?" Because that was the length of the program, and I really saw like this could be a wonderful opportunity for me, and also a really full circle moment because when I got into social media, it was to challenge Instagram and make content as accessible as possible. And I was doing a lot of image descriptions, audio descriptions, and things like that. And I thought, what a way for me to give back to my community is to be able to do audio description for the blind and visually impaired community. So that's how I got into voice acting. I don't think I've really had any mentors there, but everyone I've met along the way has been incredibly supportive. The school's been very supportive as well. I've had to teach them about accessibility as well. And we have a group of a younger cohort and probably people my age, and they learn about my disability and vision loss. as well. So we've been all learning from each other. So it's been an incredible journey. I'm so proud of where we've gotten now. And yeah, I am currently working on the audiobook, about 75% finished. And yeah, doing my first gig this week. So I'm really excited.
Well, that's fantastic, and I'm sure I'm
Thank
not
you.
alone in wishing you all the best of luck. We
Thank
do
you.
have a hand. Oh,
Sure.
we have a hand raised from Richard Marion.
Hi, Richard.
Richard, do you still have a question? His hand was raised for a little while before I got to him.
Hi,
Let's
can
just.
you hear
Oh,
me?
here he is.
Yeah,
Yes, we can hear you, Richard.
I thought we were running short of time, so that's why I lowered my hand. Um, so Anne, thank you for your presentation. Actually, it's funny. When I saw your name, I thought, oh, I'll sign up for the webinar series. My experience
Yeah.
with because I wanted to hear your story because we've worked together on a couple of
Yeah.
committees and have a meeting together tomorrow night, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking like and I just want to like I'm congenitally blind, so I've been blind since birth, and I think the message, the stories that you talk about are really also important for parents of young blind children to hear as well too,
Yeah.
especially people that are born blind, because
Yeah.
um unless you live in BC, you may not get that's the sort of that exposure to sort of um, blind youth or adults that are as a parent of a blind child that share that same philosophy of actually making the diagnosis only part of your story, and sort of
Yeah.
and adapting your story to move on, or actually doing things in spite of your blindness as well too. So I think
Hmm.
that's an important thing to know for any parents that are on here as well too, is to hook up with organizations like Blind Beginnings or Canadian Council of the
Yes.
Blind, especially organizations that do work with blind children and youth as well too, because that's really important, because it allows blind children to sort of experience as much as their youth and childhood as they can as well too,
Yes.
including getting falling off playground equipment and things like that as well too. That's all part of growing up, is from my perspective. um and then something totally unrelated, you mentioned about the colors going across your eyes. A friend of mine is having a similar experience with
Oh,
like getting their vision is clouded by different colors. In their case, it's red and
yeah.
blue.
Uh-huh.
And they just you might just something to keep in mind with your medical professionals. They were referred to a neurologist, because they think it might, because
Oh,
they couldn't find any physical reason for it either as well too. And
right.
it could
Okay.
actually be the brain sort of trying to compensate for your changes in vision as well too.
Yes, yes, yes. That's a really good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, thank you so much. Neuro-ophthalmologist, that's a good one. Definitely. Actually, a lot of times when I had my chronic migraines, my headaches, they we even thought it was with my vision, but it's not related to my vision. So I saw a neuro-ophthalmologist for that too. But yeah, the body, I don't know. Right?
The
Yeah,
body can't
yeah.
sometimes can't compensate for various
No,
things, and then all
no.
of a sudden your brain kind of goes, I've had enough, and just creates
Yeah,
things.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, thank you so much for that. And that's definitely something I'll keep in mind as I
Yeah.
go through this next set of testing. Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. Good having you here.
Th- Thanks, Richard. We have another question. Monica, I'm just gonna allow Monica. You should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the presentation, and I think especially to highlight like just the making space for grief. I think that's really like powerful to hear. I guess I kind of have two questions, but I'm so curious about the audio description work that you
Sure.
mentioned. But
Yep.
also, like as I guess as things change, I don't want to assume, but for me, like
Mm,
not being able to do things that I used to, or also not being able to do things that I want to do, I think it can be really tough to feel like a sense of like satisfaction. And I'm just curious, I guess, if that's something like, do you have any advice? Is that something you've experienced, or like how do you kind of handle that, if that makes sense?
sure. Do you want me to answer your first question about the audio description?
If you have the time, I'd love to.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. About how to get into it, or
I'm just curious, like what the project is, like, or like how, like,
oh, yeah.
as a person with vision loss, like I'm just really curious about like how that works.
So after I finished completing my program, I applied with Descriptive Video Works, who's actually based out of Vancouver, and so they're very tied in with Netflix. So what I'm doing is a Netflix documentary. So I'm doing the audio description for that.
Oh,
I don't
cool.
know what the documentary is or anything like that. And once I know, I probably can't say anymore. But that's all I know right now. But I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. And with your next question, um, let me see. Can you repeat it again?
It's just like, how about like any thoughts on like how you learn to feel satisfied with like when what you're able to do like changes so much?
Mm. I think that in itself is a hard one, because you're going through things and you're trying to do what you can in the best way that you can. And I think what came to me when I realized that I'm actually doing something good is, um, when I'm on social media, there was a young girl that reached out to me from another continent and said, thank you, because you're the first person I've seen that looks like me with a white cane.
Mm,
And that hit me really hard because it is so true. Like, we need to see representation. So even
hmm.
if it's I'm just going to Walmart and scanning my groceries, like, I need to be out there. Um, and I used to be so self-conscious about my white cane, but now I'm like, you know what? People are gonna stare at me. I'm gonna give them something good to look at, right? So I just go out there, and I think it's really just living your life in the best way that you feel, and that's the most important. Sometimes we don't know what that ripple effect will be, but when it comes, that's the part that makes you realize, yeah, this is all worth it. Like, this was worth it. Recently I had an opportunity to be at this local high school, like, that I've grown up around. I've like my friends went to it, and I got to be part of their human library. So I was like a human, like a book they took out, and they got to ask questions. And it was that probably to me has been the most impactful thing I've ever done, because I got to speak to students that were grade 11 and 12, just on the precipice of life and life changes, and being able to be that voice to that younger me that I would have needed. I think that is something that definitely helped me, is to be there for others, to help them. um, because we go through life and there's a lot of ups and downs, but I think what we learn can be helpful for someone else in their journey, in their path.
Thank you so much. I really get like
Mm,
just to do things that are meaningful and just really notice like the impact that you have with like what you are
yes,
able to do. So thank you.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And you'll be so surprised at the impact that you are having. It's amazing who's watching and who's paying attention, and someone that you like. There's many of us that walk around with vision loss, but you can't tell. And knowing that you're living your best life is huge.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Uh, and I think we have one last question if you still
Okay.
have time.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
good. hmm
Sandra asked, at what point should you inquire about a cane?
Um, the moment that you feel you're uncomfortable, that you don't feel safe. For me, it was I was commuting to work, and I was still people had no idea that I was having vision loss. Like, I literally was living a double life, but I was tripping and falling on my commutes, and that's when I realized that I I need to get a white cane. I knew it in my brain I needed a white cane, but I was still like, I don't know if I want to use it. I don't want people to know, and a lot of people didn't know what I was going through, and I was afraid of telling my employer too. Afraid of losing my job and things like that. But that to me was when I realized I knew that I needed a white cane, is because I was falling and injuring myself, and I needed to be safe, and I needed other people to know that I needed the space around me so that I could take my time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And I'm just scanning. We have. I can't tell. I mean, I'm sure you can see. We have so many, thank yous and very
Oh,
insightful and inspiring. Thank you, Anne. Enjoy Italy. We have plenty of gratitude, but I think that's the
thank you.
last question. So if
Yep.
if there's no more questions, I think we can look at wrapping this up.
Yeah.
And we can't thank you enough for
Yeah. Thank
for
you so much.
participating in this webinar
Yeah.
series. And we hope you and everyone else has enjoyed the session.
Yeah. And if anyone, you're welcome to reach out to me through email or social media. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, perfect. Maybe what I'll
Mhm.
do then is we're going to record this session, or we have been recording this session. So we'll get it put up on the CCB's YouTube, and when I send out the email reminding everyone that the recording is available, I'll include your information, as well as a link to your book and Instagram and LinkedIn, if that's okay.
Sounds good. That's great. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been so good talking to you. I love this community. I've met the most amazing people through our vision loss community, honestly. So thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to spend with me. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.